Disclaimer: this video is of humorous nature only. The author does not seek to insult or humiliate anyone. The video may contain profanity. People under the age of 16 should refrain from watching this video. Story 1. I did it because I fell madly in love. Or so I thought. He was a covert narcissist that played me like a fiddle. I was young, insecure, with a very traumatic childhood, in an abusive relationship. Recovering from a traumatic event in my life I had no idea how to process. I thought God threw me a bone for once, and I took it with both hands without thinking of the consequences. I knew he was married, but somehow in the state I was, it never clicked that his wife truly existed. I don't know how to describe it. She was a distant entity, not a real human. I think it was my way of dehumanizing her, so as to not feel morally conflicted. She found out and confronted me. Whereas in the beginning, he told me he wants to leave her. He walked out, tried to move out, but she actually broke down and he decided to stay. Turns out when she was there ripping me a new one, he acted like a little bitch and said nothing. After this, he did not stop reaching out and begging me to continue the relation crap, even though I told him to stay away from me and leave me alone. He tried everything to get me to talk to him. I did not budge. Now, this was a very painful experience that I truly believe managed to mature me emotionally. It effed me up bad, but I did learn from it a lot. If you or anyone else reading this are in this position, I do not judge but only want to ask you, why is an emotionally unavailable man good enough for you? Why do you love and value yourself so little to not have your own man who is only yours and loves only you? I will never make the same stupid thing ever again, as the above questions clicked for me and I value myself enough to get a good man. Not someone else's cheating bag of dirt. For everyone else judging me or hating me, there's nothing more to say other than, I am sorry. I did something stupid and I learned a lot of life lessons from it. Story 2. It was an open relationship and it was big ol' mess. They pretended to be more open and chill with everything than they really were. But his partner was weirdly jealous of me and was convinced he'd leave her for me. She pulled these power moves where she made him cut short us, hanging out one time and made him spend time with her and I cut it quits then and there. I so wasn't down for juvenile crap like that. Ironically, she ended up leaving him for the other dude she was screwing. Story 3. I didn't know for 2 years. When I confronted him about making plans on FB to move in with another chick and accused him of having another woman, he told me that technically I was the other woman, but she was willing to let me move in with them. We broke up and he moved in with her a few months later. A year after we broke up, he called me complaining that she wasn't financially responsible and wasn't able to run a house as well as me. He asked me to move to Florida with him. I laughed at him and said he should have thought about that before telling me I was the other woman. Story 4. Not a woman. But I was the side piece to a man who swore up and down that he was straight, until he had a drop of alcohol that was. Then he couldn't keep his hands off me. Kept reassuring himself that he's doing this as a favor to me, and that I must really want this. His girlfriend was a really nice girl too, if a bit up her own arse sometimes. We had several classes in school together, and I'd occasionally walk her home. She had moved away by the time the guy in question and I started fooling around, and they were maintaining a long-distance relationship. Why'd I do it? Mostly selfish indulgence. Aside from losing my virginity years before, I had never really been touched by anyone in a meaningful way. I was lonely, touch-starved, and the option was right there. Of course I was going to give in to it. In my head, I was cold, and for a brief moment, there was warmth. I lied to myself for a time because she had made a comment about me and him kissing being hot, so I thought she'd be okay with it, if it and more became a semi-regular thing. She was not. In truth, I just didn't really care what she felt and cared more about myself. Selfish, yeah, I guess, but I'm not particularly sorry about that part of it. I am more sorry about allowing myself to be used just for a bloody bit of skin contact. Anyway, after a while things stopped. They split up. Our lives went on. And as far as I know, none of us even think about the other, and that's that lull. Story 5. Self-hatred and that I'm too mentally immature and weak to leave yet. I fell hard 2.5 years ago. I had the impression he was single because he gave me undying attention and wouldn't sleep just to talk to me and open up. Once he started getting a little more distant, 3 months into our situationship, he told me that he had a partner of over a decade. Funny thing is, I actually didn't believe he had a partner because nobody would tolerate their man talking to a risque cosplayer all day and night. Duck that. However, after looking back, she was probably away on a business trip, or they were on a break, and maybe he thought he could try his hand at flirting with someone who gave him the attention he needed. Sometimes I like to think we gave each other Stockholm Syndrome Lamau. He never left after I confessed my feelings, said I was confused by his bachelor-esque behavior, and said I was sorry for devoting my attention to him. He said he was sorry he couldn't give me a relationship. That was the point that made me feel like I couldn't leave because he would not let me go. I even told him to let me go once during an argument. I didn't ask about his wife and don't want to. But someday I'll be ready to leave him high and dry. A lot of the more loving things he does to me bugs me and makes me latch on more. And it's my fault for being unstable, younger than them, and far away, that I can't be his main focus 100% of the time. Right after I learned he had a partner and that they were monogamous, I swallowed my pride and told myself I was just a talk every waking moment and share, your entire life pseudo-girlfriend, and that their love might fizzle out after 13 years together. We're still the closest friends and I'm trying to go the longest I can to just ghost him because I can't break this, but I can disappear. My brain says they won't stay together, and if I brute force this friendship or lose feelings, which happens every 2-3 years, I might have a shot at happiness with him. But my soul says they will die hand in hand, and I will self-sabotage our entire friendship one day, and that will be that. Then I can move on to someone who is single and who actually loves me. As of now, I'm ignoring his 23 texts. Yes, 23. And will just continue on as far as I can. Story 6. I didn't choose to be, but was unknowingly a side chick for almost a year. It still blows my mind to this day how long he managed to lie to 2 women for, and how his wife never cottoned on as he was always with me. He had a bachelor pad in the city, told his co-workers he'd separated and paraded me around to them at events, as well as coming to all my family and work events and coming on a few vacations with me. All while checking in with his wife every few weekends when I thought he was going to visit his elderly mom. I met a few of his family members, but never his mom. His best friend finally told me at a dinner that he was still married and that I should have a chat with his ex, so I got brave and sent her a message on Facebook. It was wild. She was super nice to me, kicked him out, and I cut ties and blocked him on everything. She said that things hadn't been great, they hadn't been intimate in 6 years, but were still very much married. She just thought he was working all the time. The weirdest thing was that a few months later, I think she must have taken him back because she started sending me super nasty messages. I understand that I was sleeping with her husband, but it was unknowing, and I think if I were in her position, I would have placed greater blame on my ex. All in all, if you have a choice in the matter, do not do it. Men who cheat are the lowest of the low, and we can all do so much better. It made me a bit sad that his wife turned on me like that, but I kinda get it. I am glad I spoke to her though, because he could have kept it up for a long time. I've since upgraded big time and am engaged to a lovely man who is definitely not two-timing. It took a long time to trust again though, and I hope anyone else who has been in this kind of mess gets their own happy ending. Story 7. I fell in love with an incredible man. We connected as online friends over a mutual interest. The friendship was fast, near immediate. It was like we clicked almost instantly. As the months went on, our connection deepened and we grew more vulnerable with each other. One day he had the balls to bring it up. What is happening, and did I feel it too? I said I did. Each of us expressed feeling a level of comfort and understanding with the other, that we had never felt so wholly seen and known before. Not by anyone, ever. Supported, accepted, and wanted and welcomed. It felt like we were mirrors of each other, 2 halves of the same brain. We had our first phone conversation. His voice was perfect. We hadn't even seen each other's faces. It's not like we negotiated an affair. But we didn't hold back either. We chatted every single day for over 2 years. We lived in different states and managed to meet in the middle a handful of times. Those days were magic. During our times together, I felt complete contentment. I could breathe and relax. Being near him was a balm. His presence brought warmth and safety. Peace. He was comfort and shelter. We propped each other up through some very difficult crap. I don't know if the details of our home lives matter, but things were bad for us both in that regard. It was all impossible, but we kept it together as long as we could. Time was extremely short for him, and we were both hurting badly over not being together. Plans were few and far between and often canceled. We were both losing, no matter how hard we tried. We were clinging to each other while we drowned. We weren't supposed to find each other, but we did. I want to know him in every lifetime. Hopefully, in at least one of them, we can be together. Whatever souls are made of, his and mine are the same. My answer for him is always going to be yes. Story 8. In hindsight, I guess I was groomed to some degree but didn't realize it. I met him when I was 16 and he was 30. I didn't know he was married at first, and by the time it came up, I was already convinced we were sailing away together to some fairy tale ending. We didn't live in the same city. I would only see him when I went to visit my grandparents and cousins. I had major self-esteem issues, and I felt so mature having someone like him interested in me. It was years before we had intimate, and I was an adult by then and should have known better. But when I was with him, I was a silly, infatuated little girl again. I didn't know the wife at all, so she was dehumanized in my mind. To me, she was his proverbial ball and chain he'd married too young, and he couldn't afford to divorce, or so I was told. The intimate lasted a few months, and then I heard his wife had cancer, and found out they actually have 2 young kids. Rose-colored glasses were often an instant and reality hit, and that was the end of that. I didn't formally break it off, just totally ghosted him, and for years made sure to never run into him, at least alone, when I visited family. I still get updates about him just because he's in professional contact with some of my cousins on occasion. His wife passed away about 10-15 years ago. I feel immense remorse for her and hope she never found out. He remarried someone younger, I think younger than me, and they had a baby last year when he was 56. Story 9. I didn't know it when I met him. Clearly he was a player, but I wanted to play. When I found out about his job, I was shocked and embarrassed as I knew her personally. I didn't do anything wrong, and it was his mess to fess up to, as I was not the only one. I moved on and grew up from all that. They broke up over it. She deserved better and got it. Story 10. When I was in my early 20s, I met my best friend's ex from her freshman high school and fell fast and hard for him. Turns out he liked me too. I made the mistake of telling him we could never be truly together, but I still loved him. So we were a fling thing for a few months. Then one day I got an angry text message from my bestie, whom I hadn't talked to in a couple months, that I needed to come get my stuff from her room ASAP. And that's how I found out. She apparently wasn't over him like she had advertised and begged him to date her again. Since he kept my and his relationship under wraps, he had no problem getting back together with her. Long story short, I lost my best friend, all our mutual friends and him. For a long time I blamed myself and called myself the other woman. I agreed with my friend's decision to take all my friends away. One thing that kept me going, though, was that no matter how much she hated me and how evil I was, I couldn't stop existing just because she wanted me to. I was still a person who had been hurt, even if I was the one in the wrong. It was a sucky experience, but I learned it's okay to be a bad person, make mistakes, and move past it. I'm also a couple years older. My brain has finally fully developed, and holy cow, it's so nice. No more falling head over heels in love with people I shouldn't. Story 11. I'm a guy who was a side piece to an ex-friend's girlfriend back in high school. My friend randomly started being an asshole and treating me like crap, and mostly stopped talking to me completely unless we were at a party together. One night, his girlfriend hosted a party and a bunch of people just crashed there. In the morning, I was still drunk, peeing in the bathroom, and she walked in, stripped, got in the bath, then asked me to join. She said they broke up last night, but he still stayed over to avoid going home drunk. For some reason, I figured if she wanted it, then it would be okay to have intimate with her, maybe 20th from him. I continued seeing her casually for months whenever we went to parties, and he either didn't know anything or didn't talk about it. Granted, he was barely talking to me anyways. It got real weird the one time we had intimate sober, and she mentioned that she really wanted a relationship with me. I decided I needed to talk to him about it, but he started off the conversation talking about how she was being distant and acting weird, so they were clearly still dating. I talked to him and he was rightfully pissed, but seemed to understand when I told him that if he wasn't randomly being such a dick to me, then I wouldn't have touched her with a 10F pole whether they were broken up or not. Nothing remotely close to that has happened in my adult life, which is nice. Story 12. I met him my freshman year of high school. He was a senior. He became my closest guy friend, and I eventually lost my virginity to him at 19 years old. He was in the Air Force and stationed in a nearby state. I actually met 2 of his girlfriends when he brought them to meet his parents. Every other visit home he would spend the weekend with me, but told his partner that he was visiting his parents. This went on for almost 3 years, and I ended it when he hooked up with an acquaintance while he was in town and I was too sick to hang out. At the time, I had tricked myself into thinking that I was just so desirable that someone would be willing to cheat to be with me. But over 10 years later, I realized that I had massive insecurity issues and was easily manipulated. He served me all the red flags on a silver platter, and I was still devastated when he cheated on me. He had a drinking problem and would push me to do things intimately that I wasn't quite ready for. And the whole time I would tell myself that I was so cool in intimacy. I could chalk it up to naivete or blame being inexperienced in relationships, but I think in reality I was getting a kind of attention that I wasn't getting from anyone else. Story 13. He wasn't technically married but engaged. I worked with both him and his fiancée. I was single and in a very selfish mindset. I became fast friends with him and caught feelings, but was never planning on acting on them in any way. A different coworker and I were talking one day and said that he had feelings for me too, and thought I was attractive. Him and his fiancée were heavily on the rocks because he had just found out that she had cheated years ago, at the beginning of their relationship. He figured he'd even the score in sleep with someone else. I was his go-to. I knew it was wrong, but I was entranced by the thrill of the secrecy, and the fact that we all worked together was just so hot. We agreed it would be a one-time fling, and I was fine with that. He then later tells me he wants to, again, so it happens a couple more times. We would hang out at bars together and talk, and I started to fall for him, but I knew he would never leave her, so I ended it. They were set to be married a year later, so I gave him a chance to tell her, but he wouldn't, so I did. They ended up getting married anyway. I am not proud of this. It's my biggest regret. Story 14. For 2 years, I was in a relationship with someone whom I thought was truly mine. The relationship wasn't perfect. We were separated by distance and an age gap. Not a scandalously big age gap, I swear. But other than that, we were mirrors of each other. Same core values, same work ethic, same tastes, same humor. We could talk for hours. It was a lot of fun being with him. I found out later on that he was married with kids. I was devastated, broke up with him, and came running back when he got in touch with me again months later. I was so lovesick that I was ready to accept his crumbs and leftovers. It finally dawned on me to walk away when, during my birthday, surrounded and celebrated by family and friends, it still felt like it wasn't enough. I was wishing for his presence, wishing he was beside me to celebrate a personal milestone. I thought I deserved better. I deserved a love I can celebrate in the open with someone who can and will always meet me halfway. I broke up with him for good on my birthday. Never spoke to him since. Story 15. Because I was selfish. I met this guy and he'd come out of a relationship clearly not over his ex, but he was hot and we had a great time together. We laughed, we had fun, and the intimate was great. But I knew he'd never be relationship material, so I suggested something casual. This went on for a bit. We both dated other people and spoke about this, but met up with each other every couple of weeks and had a lot of fun. Then I noticed I could no longer see his Insta stories, but I could see the page of the girl he'd tagged a few times before he blocked me from his stories. It was clear there was something going on, but he was still hooking up with me. And frankly, I was having fun, so said nothing. It only happened a handful of times after I knew, but I still didn't care. Then one day, we weren't Instagram friends anymore, and I've not heard from him since. I'm not proud of that time, fun though it was for me, but I am genuinely glad he's happy with her. Story 16. We were friends with benefits. He started dating someone. Intimate was too good and my lizard brain didn't care. My boundaries were crossed during a session, and I semi-ghosted him. He informed me they broke up, not because she found out, but unrelated issues. We haven't hooked back up and probably won't. Story 17. I did it because I saw him first and was already married. My husband and I are open, so I wasn't doing anything to jeopardize my own nest. The cheating guy never stopped communicating with me even after the new girlfriend, so I never took their relationship seriously. We had intimate a few times, and then when I decided I was done with him, I told his girlfriend what he was doing. I did her a favor because he was planning to upheave her life on the pretense of him not being a total piece of crap. Even though they tried to salvage what they thought they had, they never could because I cracked their foundation in a way she couldn't ignore. She decided she deserves better and is happily thriving. He pretends to be different people on this app to fill the emptiness he deserves. My husband and I laugh about the entire situation. Story 18. We'd been on and off FWB for basically a decade ever since we were kids, whenever we both happened to not be in relationships at the same time. So, we were very used to meeting up, having a really great time together, then going back to whatever our lives were, already. At some point, our usual thing happened when I was single and lonely, but while he had a LTR girlfriend. I guess on my end, nothing was really out of the ordinary, and it was just something I was used to doing with that person when I didn't have someone. Going through the motions, I guess, not really thinking at all about the GF I hadn't met. But I felt bad later when my brain caught up, so it ended, because I turned our unspoken rule, which we broke, into a spoken rule and told him we wouldn't be doing that anymore. Story 19. I have an acquaintance who swears at cheating and claims it prolonged her marriage. She eventually divorced. She now sleeps with a few men, some married in relationships, but is looking to settle and claims those lovers are not good enough. I'm not sure if she's just deflecting or really thinks that. She really does feel a hell of a lot better about herself, claims to be a feminist. Burr has zero qualms about stealing men. She says everything is fine as long as Noon finds out. It really bugged me. A lot of PPL seem to know and are fine with it. I told her I don't subscribe to lying to PPL. You can try an open relationship or just not have a relationship altogether, but skip the cheating. Story 20. I chose to be a side chick when I was in the closet. I felt like no one else would love me, so this would have to be good enough. I didn't understand that I deserved more. It became abusive. It took me longer than it should to exit the relationship for good, but I finally did. I would never again. Being in a secret relationship puts you in a perfect position to be abused. No one to witness it. No one to share your concerns. Story 21. I thought I was being a safe haven for someone who really had a bad situation. I didn't try to save him, as much as just let him be him because his wife allegedly stifled family fun. I offered an alternative instead. I didn't give him advice or anything, just stuck by his side. It was such a dumb outlook. Story 22. I didn't know I was a side chick as soon as I found out I was out of that. I am not ever that desperate that I need to share a man. He did get the shock of his life when I left him. I think he had a huge ego and was used to being the one who did ghosting and dumping. Never will I be an enabler for a guy to continue treating girls that way. It did wake me up to how horrible some people are. Horrible and unlovable to me. No man is that special in my opinion. I turned down some nice guys when I agreed to start seeing him as well. I hate the feeling of being fooled. I feel sorry for his partner. Her life must be an insecure hell with him. Story 23. I worked with a girl and her BF had a crush on me. He got me drunk often and slept with me. Not an excuse, but I wasn't in a right state of mind. Eventually, she found the texts that I'd send to my friends after it all went down. I wasn't necessarily a side chick, just someone who made stupid decisions and drank too much. This wasn't the first time he cheated, so I hope she left him. She deserved better. I'm a better person now. I don't drink nearly as much, if any, and am still suffering the consequences for my decisions. I was a crafty person and I'm different now. This all happened years ago too. So please don't hate me, y'all. I was barely even aware, let alone conscious during it all. Story 24. To answer this from a diff perspective. I've been the dude that the woman was cheating on her person with a couple times. In every case, they were with awful, alcoholic, abusive guys that they hated but were stuck with, at least for a while, for financial or employment reasons, and I didn't give a crap because duck those dudes. Funny they liked picking on their woman but never said crap to my 6'2", 230 ass when they found out about me. I wouldn't do it again at this point in my life, but when I was 30 or whatever, I loved it. In all cases, they eventually got out of the crap relationships, and I am still internet friends with them. Zero regrets. Story 25. I'm opposite. He cheated on me with someone in our friend group. She is now one of my absolute best friends and my sister-in-law. AKA, I married her brother. He was 23, I was 21, she was 17. He was amazing at making you feel incredibly special and wonderful until he thought you were staying. Then he would slowly destroy you and your world. Also, she was a child and he was an adult. She takes none of the blame. Yes, we have talked about it and have agreed. We are both better off without him. Story 26. I was 15, and he was an older boy in my high school who rode my bus. He used big words and I had a massive crush on him. He had a GF in another school, but he asked me to prom where we kissed in the garden. He told me he broke up with his other GF afterwards, and then proceeded to cheat on me with my so-called best friend. Lose 'em how you win 'em. I vowed I would never do that to another person, nor will I ever be with somebody who has cheated. Story 27. Met someone who I connected with instantly, like I never had with anyone else before. Didn't think it would be anything more than friends until it was. Never thought I'd be in that situation, and thought I was better smarter than that. And I kept telling myself I wouldn't do it again, but I just felt really good when I was with them. And I was going through my own stuff and very, very lonely, and wasn't strong enough to say no to a connection with someone else. That made me feel good. Story 28. He said she was abusive and that he would be ending their marriage. I was in an unhappy marriage where my self-esteem was in the toilet. He pursued me hourly while I was married, but as soon as I was divorced, started stringing me along. I had a kid. My husband's, not his. For nearly a decade, he strung me along, then he got cancer and died. His widow and I are on speaking terms now. She didn't abuse him. We made out but never had intimate. Story 29. Honestly? Desire. The thought of being desired so much that he was willing to sacrifice his living situation and long-term relationship was disorienting. It felt like a drug I couldn't get enough of. The heart-pounding adrenaline of watching him debate in real time if he was going to cheat, and then feeling him look at me and decide, didn't want to, but had to. It was a drug. And I think that's the best metaphor because drugs are dangerous. And they ruin people's lives. Story 30. I did. I chose it because I wanted him. His marriage was already dead in the water. He cheated on his wife with me, kissed me, and the following day I told him we shouldn't pursue this and I would take the secret to my grave if that was what he wanted. He split up from his wife, moved out, and asked me on a date 2 weeks later. We've been married 10 years and have 2 children. Story 31. He told me he left her. He didn't. So I chose to out him to her every chance I could get. He'd send me letters apologizing or begging we stay together, so I'd mail them to her workplace so she could see what a loser she has. Well, he died at age 35, she got a $950,000 insurance payout, and I was left salty and bitter. Lol. Malal. Story 32. Always remember all you side chicks waiting for him to leave his wife or her to leave her husband. How you get them is how you lose them. If they were taken from one person, what makes you so special that they would do it again? Nothing, and they will. Then you will feel the heartache you put that other person through, but 10 times worse. Story 33. I did it when I was very young, 17, inexperienced and insecure. This handsome, charismatic man paid me so much attention and made me feel so beautiful. We hooked up, then I found out he was taken, but still hung around for a couple months. It ended when she found out about me, stalked me, and attempted to assault me in public. Never again. Story 34. According to a neuroscientist who did a TED Talk, betrayal trauma is worse than death. Having experienced it, I agree. I would never want to cause someone else that level of pain. Plus, I believe people who have had near-death experiences that when we die, we experience all the pain we caused others. Karma's a bitch. Story 35. How high quality was the man? Was he in the top 20%, 15, 10, 5? If so, 80% of the girls are looking for him. Probably half or more of the guys are totally invisible to 80% of the women. With this kind of statistics, in order to be with a high-value man, women are going to have to share. It's that or be alone or settle. Thank you all for watching. Watch even more great stories on my channel.